You are listening to Massage and Fitness Media, Episode 2. Joining us today is one of a few longest practicing registered massage therapists I know. She is pretty active on social media, and I enjoy some of her stories in teaching experiences and how massage therapy is practiced and regulated in Ontario, Canada. Plus, we share a love of authentic Chinese food, particularly Hong Kong-style comfort food. And I still think Toronto still offers the best Hong Kong-style comfort food outside of Hong Kong and Macau. And so, Kalpin is in the house. Hey, did I ever tell you that I actually visited Edmonton around late October, about in 2016?
No, you didn't tell me that.
I thought you did. I thought we had a conversation.
Perhaps I forgot.
Okay, maybe we've forgotten.
It's
But
possible.
you mentioned about Edmonton being minus 40, and that was considered cold by Canadian standards.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was there in October, it was still considered a fall, but it was 29, how should I say, like -2.
Mm-hmm.
-2 Celsius at noon.
Oh, gee.
And
That is chilly.
all I had on was a pair of jeans, some boxers, and 3 layers of clothing, and I was still freezing my butt off, basically.
Yep. It's chilly.
So I'm not used to that. So
The other day, I saw a young man out walking on the street in shorts and flip-flops.
What? In Toronto right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, they do.
Oh,
it's a thing.
gosh. It's a thing.
Yeah, young guys, they'll wear shorts all winter. I don't know why that's a thing, but it is. I saw another one dressed the same, waiting for a bus in the corner, and the only redeeming feature I could see was he had incredibly hairy legs. So I thought, maybe that's keeping him warm.
Well, I think we know some people who are like that. So I definitely know at least 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so we're just talking about how cold it is out there because just this morning on Facebook and on Instagram, there are a bunch of people over in Vancouver were sharing photos and videos of how cold it actually was. There was a young lady who shared a short video of ice encased on a door of a SkyTrain.
Really?
In Vancouver. The next stop is Patterson. And that was like, oh my gosh, I used to ride that train so often when I was visiting Vancouver, and that's the first time I see all the snow and ice crusted around the door, especially on the bottom.
Well, that happens. I mean, what happens if the temperature starts to drop? It's raining, and then it turns to freezing rain, and then it turns colder and turns to snow. So when we go out to scrape off our cars, there's layers, and you have to scrape through the ice and free up the wipers. And yeah, we had that the other day. Everything was under an inch of ice. It happens.
An inch of ice. Man,
Mm-hmm.
All I get is a frost film on my car in the morning around 0 degrees here.
Yeah.
And I bet ants can ice skate on top of my car. Yeah, they can.
Yeah. Well, you get used to it.
I get used to it. Not here. In San Diego, even 10 degrees is considered cold, and people are already wearing toques and Uggs here.
Really.
Yeah.
Here people walk around and, it's amazing. I have clients who come in because they're in the neighborhood, they're nearby.
Mm-hmm.
They'll come in wearing their pajama bottoms and their flip-flops in this weather because they figure they just have to, run a few feet from the car to the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they go like that all the time.
Wow. Okay, I may have to spend 1 year and appreciate all 4 seasons before I drop dead, because because I've lived in San Diego almost all my life, and we don't have the 4 seasons like most of the continent does, and it's kind of depressing actually. Sunshine, palm trees,
Some people
all
move.
day.
Some Canadians move there just for that reason, because they want to see sunshine and palm trees all
Mm.
year.
No, not this San Diegan here. I want snow. I want
Yeah.
snow. I want snow. That's it. I
It's
have this weird obsession. I don't know why, because
yeah.
well,
Well,
give me 1 year. Give me 1 year, and maybe I'll appreciate our weather here in Southern California more.
yeah. Well, the gentleman who fixes my computer for me is originally from Trinidad, and
Oh, nice.
when he was immigrating to Canada, he was so excited because he couldn't imagine what it was like to have snow and cold, and he was a young guy, and he said he
Mm-hmm.
used to open the freezer and stick his head in and think, maybe this is what it feels like.
This was when he was still in Trinidad.
Yeah.
Oh wow. This is
Yeah.
what it feels
Yes,
like.
he was trying to imagine what it would be like to live in a cold place. And when he came here, he was excited about it. He did every winter sport. He really got into it. He wanted to enjoy it and appreciate it. So now he's been here for 30 years or so, and like the rest of it, he just goes out to shovel the snow and goes back in the house again.
Yeah, the novelty wears off after a while.
Definitely does.
Yeah. All right. So we're live here today with Lee Kalpin, who is whom I have been friends with at least on social media for many years. It feels like 10 years, but I think it's a lot shorter than that. So so Lee, so today we're going to kind of cover over a little bit about what Lee Kalpin does, because she's pretty active on social media, and she has been engaging in a lot of professional discussions around massage therapy, particularly pertaining to Ontario. And she has an encyclopedia knowledge about the customs, the laws, the scope of practice, anything you want to ask about practice and legalities and education about massage therapy in Ontario. I think she is the go-to person for that type of knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Nick.
yeah. Now, how long have you been practicing anyway?
I'm in my 36th year of practice now. So 35 and a half years.
Wow. And why did you choose that to do massage therapy as your career back in, what, 83, 84?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's a bit of a story.
Okay.
This is my third career. For 20 years or so, I was a legal assistant. I worked for lawyers. And then toward the end of that, I also started working as a fitness teacher. And so those two things came together. In the legal offices in the early 80s, they were starting to use computers. So I realized that if I was going to stay in that profession, I should take courses in computers. I would have to be computer literate. And so that was where I was thinking of going back to school for computers. At the same time, I was teaching fitness classes and cross-country skiing, and I had done that for quite a few years. And I contemplated making that my new career, being a fitness trainer. But I didn't have the formal education, and there were young people coming out of colleges with qualifications as fitness program coordinators. So they were certainly going to get that job before I did. One of the courses that I taught at the Y was an exercise course for people who had back injuries. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a very worthwhile thing to do. So I started to think, if I have to go back to school, rather than learning about computers, I could do something completely new. And I felt like I was ready for a career change. So I started thinking about that course in helping people with back pain, and I thought I would like to do some kind of rehabilitation work. I looked into physiotherapy, and it was a 4-year university course. And I was in my early 40s. I had a family to support, so I didn't feel that I could commit to that. Someone, actually my brother, who is a medical doctor, suggested I looked into massage therapy, and I did. And I thought, that was the perfect solution. I could work with people who had been injured. I could do rehab work. But at that time, it was only a 1-year course, and it was affordable for me. So that's kind of what made the decision that my new career was going to be massage therapy.
Wow. That's quite a journey. I didn't even know you were in a fitness arena for a while.
Yes, I was for about
Wow.
10 years.
Wow. And what did you teach during that time? Were you a personal trainer, group classes, or something else?
It was group classes. And in those days, we didn't talk about different types of fitness. That came later. This was a general fitness class, so incorporated some aerobic work, stretching, strength exercises. It was a general fitness. It wasn't, an aerobic class or a stretch class. It was everything incorporated. And so I taught, I was teaching 2 classes, 3 mornings a week, so 6 and then 2 evenings. I was teaching about 8 classes a week, and I was also teaching cross-country skiing. So physically, it was quite active.
Okay, that's good. Now, what was your experience like teaching massage therapy back in the 90s? Now, I remember a few years ago, one of your proteges, Bodie Harrelson, had shared something like a picture of all the teachers that he graduated back in 93 and 94.
I didn't know such a picture existed. I'd love to see it.
He posted on Facebook a few years ago. I'll see if I can find it. But he did mention, I remember that post does have your picture on it, but it was so tiny you can't even see the pixels. It was too pixelated. So back then, what was it like back then to teach?
Well, Bodie's was, I believe, the first class that I taught, and in 93, and it was actually a class in business for a massage therapist. Now, when I attended school, we didn't have a business course. We had a half-hour visit from an accountant who gave us some very good advice, but that was all we had. So I had started in about 92. I had started offering private seminars on business for massage therapists because they weren't getting it at school. And I guess the school picked up on it that I was offering that course, and they offered me a position at the school teaching it. So Bodie's was the very first class I taught, and I remember him. He was a tall, skinny kid with long blonde hair, and he could barely speak English. He's from Iceland. So, and very, very, very bright. So I do remember Bodie from that class. But that's how I started out, teaching a business class. And then the school asked if I could take on another course, massage treatments. And I did that. So it was kind of a gradual and rather unplanned process, getting into teaching.
So what was the education like back in the early 80s when you were in school compared to right now?
Okay, well, in the 80s, we were registered under what was called the Board of Directors of Masseurs of Ontario. And we were regulated with them up until 1994, when the law changed and we became regulated by the College of Massage Therapists of Ontario. So a lot of things changed in those several years. When I was in school, it was a 1-year course. Now, I can't remember how many hours it was. In those days, we still used to talk about hours, which we don't use in Canada anymore. But it was still an hour-based program. But ours was 1 year, so I would say it was about 2/3 of what the present course is. And our present course is about 2,200 hours, although we don't advertise our courses by hours anymore, but just to make the comparison. So I'd say my course was about 2/3 of that. Many things we didn't have on our schedule. We didn't have a business course. We didn't have a course on law, which is now a very extensive course. I've been teaching it for years, but we didn't have that. our assessment course was very minimal compared to what is taught now. And we didn't teach what I would call the advanced techniques that are taught in schools now. That would include things like joint play, PNF, Golgi tendon release, trigger points, and several other techniques like that. So the program has changed considerably since I was in school.
What have you been working on recently in terms of in terms of your practice and your and are you still teaching online classes? I remember you told me that before.
Okay, I think we're kind of jumping around out of order, aren't we?
Not really. We're at number 3 right now. So
Okay, so yes, things are changing for me right now. I have been for several years teaching part-time, a couple of days a week at a massage therapy school. And I have my own clinic in my home, and I teach continuing ed courses a few times a year. So that's been my current schedule for several years now. I have just given my resignation at the school, and it becomes effective. Monday is my last day. The main reason is because the school is about 45 kilometers away from me, which is not a long drive. It would usually take me about 40 minutes, but it's down a very busy commuter 4-lane highway. And the mornings in rush hour, in winter, in the snow, are awful, and it can sometimes take an hour and a half. So I'm basically 3 hours on the road fighting traffic, and it's wearing me out. And I've decided to, I've given my notice, I've decided not to teach the school any longer. And I think I'm going to miss it, but I think it's the right decision at this time. So I'll still have my clinic, and I'll still be doing my continuing education classes.
now, where do you see massage therapy in Ontario and pretty much all of Canada heading to in this century?
Oh, well, that's a hard question. Asks me to be a prophet.
I am actually.
Well, for one thing, we currently in Canada, we have 5 provinces in which massage therapy is a regulated health profession. I see in the next several years all the provinces becoming regulated and adhering to the same standards.
even as far north as like in Yukon, Northwest Territories.
Well, I was just going to say that we have
Wow.
10 provinces, but we also have 3 territories.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we have Northwest, Yukon, and Labrador. I don't know. I don't know if there are a sufficient number of massage therapists in those districts to put together an association and work to regulation.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah.
That will remain to be seen. Our biggest stumbling block, I guess, in getting everyone regulated is the province of Quebec, because they tend to do things their way, and they, as far as I know, have never communicated with the associations in the rest of Canada about the regulation process. They don't come to any of our meetings, although they've been invited. So Quebec may be the odd one out in the end. We'll see.
And why is that?
I'm not sure. They just tend to do things their own way. And another thing, of course, they're operating in different language. Their official language is French.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I don't know. Most Quebecers are bilingual, but they tend to go their own way. It'll be interesting to see if they decide to get on board with us eventually. I know that a couple of the unregulated provinces are working towards becoming regulated. They have put proposals before the government. So I expect that a couple more provinces will be regulated for very shortly. So the advantage to regulation is we have something called a core competency document that was developed years ago between British Columbia and Ontario.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That sets out all the educational requirements. And any province that becomes regulated then adopts that document as their standard for education. And anybody who completes a course where they have worked with that competency document would then be eligible to practice in any of the regulated provinces. So it's a great,
nice.
yeah,
Okay.
so it's a great advantage. At one time, if somebody from Ontario wanted to practice in British Columbia, they had to go to out west and go through the whole exam process, even though they had already done it in their home province. So now, with interprovincial regulation, that's no longer necessary. If I wanted to practice in British Columbia, all I would have to do is take their online course on their regulations, on their rules and laws, pass the online course, and I would be able to apply for regulation. Because that's the only thing that differs slightly from one jurisdiction to the other, might be some of the rules.
That is similar to what has been going on in the U.S. also, because I do know a friend, a former coworker who practiced in California, but she moved to Colorado. But I'm not sure what the details were, because Colorado has a different set of laws in practice, because they are a licensed state, while California is not.
I see.
California doesn't even have a board.
Oh, really?
No, we pretty much almost anybody can hang a shingle up and call himself a therapist,
Really?
But even though there is some regulation, but it's very localized here. Every little county and little town has their own little regulation, or no regulation at all. So it's kind of like a Wild West here in California.
Well, you are the West.
Oh. Well, we'll see what we can do. For now, I'm not even sure where it's heading, but maybe this will be a topic for another day. That's cool. Hey, so for all of you who have known Lee Kalpin online for a long time and can talk to her, laugh with her, or even argue with her, do you have any questions for her? Feel free to comment, and I think she'll be happy to reply online, as she usually does. Okay, so one last question. I think this is something I've been back in my head for a long time. Is given that massage therapy in Ontario and even in British given that excuse me, got something in my throat here. Okay, given that there is a wider scope of practice up in Ontario and over in BC compared to here in the US, because exercise is part of the recommendations. Is it within scope of practice?
Oh, absolutely. Matter of fact, it's a requirement. It's tested on in the exams to become a massage therapist. Got
it, because that is outside of our SOP here in the States. But I think some states like Washington and New York might be the exceptions. But most states, including California, that's beyond our SOP. But given that, how would that be any different than a physical therapist?
It wouldn't necessarily. The scope of practice of massage therapists, physical therapists, or we call them physiotherapists, and chiropractors is very similar. We can all do a great many of the same things. The difference, there are some exceptions. Physios and chiros have some what's called controlled acts, like a grade 5 joint play, which like a chiropractic adjustment that is specific to their profession. But most of what they do, which is manipulation of the joints and the muscles, is very similar in scope. The three professions share a lot of commonalities. So now I'm lost. Where was I going with that?
Okay.
I'm going to mess up your editing. What was the original question?
No, well, the question is, why would a patient go to one of these manual therapists but not the other? Why would we go to a RMT rather than a chiro or a physio?
Okay. Well, first of all, I would think one of the main things is the amount of hands-on time. With a chiropractor, it could be anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 or 20 minutes. Some chiropractors do a very quick adjustment, others do much more extensive work. Physios, there's some hands-on work, but often a lot of it is directed exercises. So some people prefer massage therapy because they get a lot more hands-on time. They will get the exercise as they would with the other two professions, but they get a lot of more hands-on manipulation. And so I think that's one of the differences. Physios use exercise differently. They use a lot more machines. They'll put somebody on an exercycle or, some sort of an exercise machine. And they tend to work with the hospitals. They do rehab work in the hospitals for people who've had joint replacement surgery or who've had stroke and are trying to recover from that and get back full function, where massage therapists don't tend to get that sort of patient. We tend to get people who've had soft tissue injury, a muscle injury, or are suffering muscle pain from overuse. And so we're doing we're doing things like, your neck is stiff. I'm going to show you and practice some exercises to keep your neck moving without pain. We're doing that sort of thing more than we're doing rehab work after a hip replacement. So our focus is quite different.
Okay. Well, thanks for clarifying that. That gives me a little bit idea, a little bit of unclutter in my head about that question. So that's all. So that's all the time we have currently with this here. And thank you very much, Lee, for your time to do this. And it's really good to hear from you again. I think for many of our friends out there on social media, this is their first time to hear your voice.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Today was a pretty eventful day. I went to my first marathon event, the Carlsbad Marathon 2020 here in San Diego, and I met a talented singer who moves my heart and mind, Sonia Rao, whom I have first heard her sing in December 2012 at a TEDx event at UCSD. I think she performed the song I Know Now. At that time, actually, the last time I saw and met her in person was at the Hotel Cafe in Los Angeles in 2013. And I saw her thing on Facebook, and she was going to perform on Carlsbad. I was like, whoa, she's right here in San Diego, so why not pay her a visit? She and two other artists, Lee Kudler and Martin Storrow, performed on stage at the marathon. And I just posted up some pictures on Flickr, and you can view them. You can actually see the performance on my Flickr account, and which you can see at the description section. And then after that, on a whim, since I was close to the I-5 highway, I decided to make a quick visit to Belmont Shores in Long Beach, where I used to live for a short while. I got some fresh Italian roast from Polly's on 2nd Street, and here I am back in San Diego. And if you enjoyed the show and the previous episode and would like to contribute to help support the work that Massage and Fitness Media is doing, you can be a sponsor for us. If you want to get more information about that, please contact me, Nicholas Ng, at editor, that's EDITOR, at massagefitnessmag.com. that's it for today's show, and I hope you enjoy it. I am trying to make at least one a month to start with and see where things go from there.